everyone present here. I, Yuga Rao, third year student of BTech Food Technology, welcome you all on the 89th Foundation Day of Institute of Chemical Technology. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor A.B. Pandit Sir, our Chief Guest Dr. Ashish Lele Sir, our Honorable Registrar Professor R.R. Deshmukh Sir, and Dr. Sanjay Mehendale Sir, UA President, to please come on the dais. Welcome, sir. Light symbolizes knowledge and wisdom. To make this evening a blessed one, let us evoke Goddess Saraswati by kindling the lamp of knowledge and wisdom. I now invite Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor A.B. Pandit Sir, our Chief Guest Dr. Ashish Lele Sir, Honorable Registrar Professor R.R. Deshmukh Sir, Dr. Sanjay Mehendale Sir, to please kindle the lamp. Thank you, sir. I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor A.B. Pandit Sir, to offer Tulsi sapling to our Chief Guest, Dr. Ashish Lele Sir. Now, I request General Secretary, Technological Association, Harshal Patil, to offer Tulsi sapling to Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor A.B. Pandit Sir. Now, I request Culture Secretary, Technological Association, Tejas Rajput, to offer Tulsi sapling to our Honorable Registrar, Professor R.R. Deshmukh Sir. Now, I request UG Representative Om Chauhan to offer Tulsi sapling to Dr. Sanjay Mehendale Sir, President of UAA. Thank you. Now, I request to please play our Institute song, Shri Rasayan Devi Ke.
क्षितिजे नव चेतनादे रसायन देविके श्री रसायन देविके श्री रसायन देविके श्री रसायन देविके देविके।
Thank you. I would now like to invite Honorable Vice Chancellor A.B. Pandit sir to deliver a welcome speech. Sir, please.
Good evening. Very nice to see this happy occasion again when we are all have gathered here to celebrate Institute's birthday. My old colleagues and collaborator and today's chief guest and Color Publications orator of ICT Foundation Day, Dr. Ashish Lele, Director, National Chemical Laboratories, Honorable Chancellor of ICT, Padma Vibhushan Dr. R. A. Mashalkar, Padma Vibhushan Professor M. M. Sharma, Padma Bhushan Professor J. B. Joshi, who is joining online, watching on YouTube from Washington. Spoke to him in the morning. Board members, Mrs. Sandra Shroff, Shri Raj Purohit, Padma Shri Professor G. D. Yadav also may be joining. All the past directors of ICT as well as directors of the satellite centers who have joined online. Registrar Professor R. R. Deshmukh, my colleagues from teaching and support staff, and my dear students, our industrial partners and other stakeholders, UA representatives, invitees, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to ICT on this occasion of 89th Foundation Day. In addition to the celebration of Foundation Day, we usually take a stock of the past and announce some new resolutions as we do every year on our birthday. For example, lose or gain weight, find something interesting, maybe publish more papers, bring in more projects, etc. As per the ethos of the tradition of ICT, which thrives to operate at the edge of academia and industry, which was formally recognized by the Indian Chemical Council only yesterday during their annual award ceremony function. ICT won the Best Industry Academia Linked Institute in India with an award titled K.V. Mariwala Award for Best Industry Linked Institute with an award money of rupees 1 lakh. Now this is only possible due to the dedicated and decade-long work by Professor Ashwin Patwardhan, Professor Parag Gokte, which got recognized yesterday. Continuing this commitment of ICT to industry and to national progress in chemical sciences, I am happy to announce that a MOU is being finalized, which will be officially signed on 6th of October 2022, where Praj Industries have agreed to support ICT and especially polymer and surface coating departments with a support of 5.17 crore to start a center of excellence and innovation in biopolymers. The efforts of head of the department, Professor S.T. Muske and his team needs to be gratefully acknowledged at this stage. They also managed to get rupees 80 lakhs from Norian and rupees 5 lakhs from C.J. Shah Foundation for lab upgradation. It is necessary for us to look back and take a stock of what we have been able to achieve in the past year, whether we have acted as per the mandate of the Institute. We have been performing to the best of our abilities, taking into account the need of our stakeholders and their dependents. With pandemic more or less behind us, the Institute's academic programs are back to offline mode, and by December, all the courses will be in offline mode with the completion of hostel repairs, which are in full swing. Unusually delayed monsoon retreat, heavy showers led to the considerable difficulties which we have experienced. However, all have performed to the best of their abilities and have assisted the institute's management in overcoming the hurdles reaching the milestones. The notable awards since our convocation, which was held on 10th of August 2022, where following ICT members have received the awards and recognition needs to be specified. Green University Audit and Accreditation of ICT to set up a global indicators of sustainability for assessing governance, academics, build-up spaces, landscaping, water management, energy sourcing and savings, air quality level, health, hygiene and resource utilization. Green University Audit of Institute of Chemical Technology was conducted by Green Mentors Agency in August 2022, and ICT has achieved 446 points out of 500 and earned a platinum ranking in Platinum Green University Accreditation for the period of academic year 2021 to 2024. Similarly, ICT received the certificates of Energy Audit and Environmental Audit for the same period. Padma Bhushan Professor J.B. Joshi crossed 25,000 citations as per Google Scholar record in September 2022, third from ICT after Professor Parag Gokte. All India MSME Association has been Professor Yadav has been elected to the successful educationist and academician by MSME Association in September 22. Dr. Prajakta Dandekar Jain from Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences and Technology received Unsa Maza Zhoka Award from Zee Marathi for a research in pharmaceutical biotechnology in August 2022. Professor Uday Annapure, Director ICT Marj, has been conferred with Sri Somalal Vyas SEA Innovation Award of 2022 with Food Technology Pathshala in September 2022. This award is for his successful innovative approach in designing of the process of intensifying synthesis of triglyceride of octanoic acid with an application of sonication and evaluation of frying characteristics of octanoic acid in September 2022. As I said, in addition to we getting certain grants, our satellite campuses are not lagging. We will be starting a Center of Excellence in Agroeconomics with an active participation of CSIR CMAP Lucknow with the active support from Dr. Prabodh Trivedi, the director there, which will be inaugurated on 4th of October at the hands of Honorable Shri Rao Sahib Danve at Jalna. ICT student team led by Suraj Kapole and Harshad Patil for their zero spillage milking can, and Ameya Suryavanshi for preserving fruit juices, for showcasing an innovative concept and winning a prize of rupees 1 lakh each in the specified category of Smart India Hackathon 2022 organized by AICT at IIT Roorkee in August 2022. The Council for Indian Chemical Society has nominated Professor Vandana Patrawale for Professor R.S. Verma Memorial Award 2022 in recognition of her scholastic contribution to the field of chemical sciences. As stated last year, the path of learning and education is the path we all have chosen, and we are trying our best with all the academic activities coming offline one by one. This year, our NRF ranking 2022 was announced on 15th of July 2022, and ICT was ranked 14th at the university level, 28th overall, 25th at research, 18th in engineering, and 7th in pharmacy. I acknowledge the contribution of all my faculty and support staff, including students, for performing their duties diligently, and I'm expecting their continued involvement and support for ICT's progress and growth. Academic activities along with socio-cultural activities have also been conducted offline now, as we are all here today. The grand convocation held in Shanmukananda Hall was an evidence of that, and the poetic speech by Chief Justice Shri Nadir, Chief Guest Shri Nadir Godrej was an icing on the cake. On this day every year, we also have usually an Alkil Amin's Young Scientist Award function, and we have our lecture, his or her lecture, in the afternoon. Unfortunately, the selection of INSA Young Scientist was delayed this year due to pandemic, which is one of the criteria for selecting this awardee, and hence this activity will be conducted in due course after 17th of October. However, I am very happy to tell you that Alkil Amins have substantially increased the award amount to rupees 1 lakh with a possible further increase. I again welcome you all on this ICT's 89th Foundation Day, and I am grateful for your participation in sharing our joy. The faculty support staff continue to perform admirably, and I described their achievements in detail during my convocation speech as well, and I will not reiterate it again. I also acknowledge the help of Color Publication Foundation Day oration assistance to the chief guest in the form of a donation and sum of rupees 25,000 as an honorarium. I am concluding my speech by publicly declaring a resolution, as we do on our every birthday, and this is the resolution on 89th birthday. We are starting today ICT's Granite Foundation, corresponding to 90 years of celebration, and a plan to collect a sum of 90 crores in this calendar year. I start this activity with my own first donation of rupees 5 lakhs and appeal to you all to support this initiative and help us in achieving our target of raising 90 crores by 1st of October 2023 to meet all the needs of our alma mater, of your alma mater, which are all student-centric needs. Thank you all again and welcome to ICT. Dhanyavad. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. I now request Dr. Sanjay Mehendale, UAA President, to introduce our chief guest for today.
Good evening. I always wonder how do you introduce somebody as well known as Dr. Lele to the audience. But now that our Vice Chancellor has given me this responsibility, I will do my best. Today we have a privilege to have a chief guest who is authority on the subject which is likely to change all our lives as we live today. Dr. Lele, an expert rheologist, is well known for studies of micro and mesostructures of polymers. After graduating in chemical engineering from UD he moved to US for his doctoral studies at University of Delaware, from where he secured his PhD in 1993. Returning to India, he started his career in National Chemical Laboratory. After a few years of working in NCL, he took sabbatical to complete his postdoctoral studies at Cambridge University. Subsequently, he resumed his services at NCL and held the chair of Department of Polymer Science and Engineering. Then a few years, he opted to take a role of Senior Vice President and head Advanced Materials and Alternate Energy Group at Reliance Industries Limited. On 1st April 2021, he became the 13th Director of CSIR in National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. Thus, the country and the NCL is fortunate to have a director who is an avid researcher and who is also has an industrial experience. Recipient of this Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, one of the highest Indian Science Award in 2006, Dr. Lele has also received various other awards and honors. To name a few: Young Scientist Award from CSIR in 1994, Young Scientist Award from INSA in 1996, Young Scientist Award from ICT in 2003. He was elected as a Fellow of Indian Academy of Sciences in 2009, received Infosys Prize Engineering and Computing Sciences in 2012, was elected as a Fellow of Indian National Science Academy in 2017. He is also a distinguished alumna of our alma mater. Dr. Lele has number of patents and publications to his credit. Dr. Lele is also an entrepreneur and is founder director of Orthocraft Innovations Private Limited and AMS Innovations Private Limited. He is also the co-founder and advisor of Biomed Innovations, a startup established at NCL Venture Center. Let us welcome this multifaceted personality. Thank you.
Can you start these as well?
Thank you, sir.
A very good evening to all of you. Respected Padma Vibhushan Professor M.M. Sharma, Padma Bhushan Professor J.B. Joshi, Padma Shri Professor G.D. Yadav, respected Vice Chancellor Professor Pandit, and dignitaries in the auditorium. It's an absolute honor and a privilege for me to come here and deliver the guest lecture on the 89th Foundation Day of the Institute. I'm a very proud alumnus of this institute, and I don't think there is any better honor for me to come and be able to deliver this lecture today. So I'm extremely happy to be here with you today. I'm going to talk about a topic that has caught my fancy for the last 12 years, and I've dedicated my research to this area. And I thought I will share some of my thoughts and how the interest in this area is exploding, not just world over, but also in India. I hope that I will touch this delicately enough. And all right. So the last year has been actually very spectacular for those of us who are interested in climate change as a problem in general. And there were three events that happened towards the mid to last year, which actually gave a huge impetus to this whole action on climate change. The first was the IPCC report, which came out sometime in October last year. And I think for the first time, there was very deeply researched scientific data that was published in the report that showed unambiguously, in very scientific terms, how anthropogenic emissions have been responsible for a major increase in climate change. Whether it is CO2 emissions, whether it is acidification of ovens, gradual melting of glaciers and polar ice caps, and so on. And various scenarios were projected in the report, which showed what would happen if business as usual continues and when many interventions are made in terms of climate action. I think in the earlier reports, it was more of guesses and estimates of what might happen. The last year's report, I think what was most significant is the extreme scientific basis for every number that was quoted in the report. So the scientific community really showed the might of science to bring forth the important issues on climate science. While this discussion was happening across the world, the Nobel Committee came up even more strongly and gave 2 Nobel Prizes to 2 very, very distinguished scientists who laid the foundations for calculating the effects of climate change, which eventually led to the entire IPCC report. So the scientific community across the world, with its highest prize, recognized the importance of climate change by giving away these 2 awards. And the third event that happened last year was COP26, where many countries made bigger pledges to climate action, and India made a very important pledge. And I think these were the 3 many important events that really brought climate action finally to the fore, and that has catalyzed a huge amount of interest in alternative energies, one of which I will talk about today. So just to give a background on India's evolving energy transition, we are expected to, of course, hit the... Yeah, so India is sort of aiming to reach 5 trillion economy very soon by 2030. That's the plan. And the hope is that we will be able to do that with lower carbon footprint. But come 2050, we will actually almost double our energy demand from something like 34 exajoules today to reaching about 75 exajoules by 2050. But what is more important is the end-to-end security for energy. And by end-to-end, I mean not just producing energy, but also the materials, the technologies that go in energy generation. India, like many other countries in the world, are craving to become more Atmanirbhar, more self-reliance in terms of our energy generation. But if you look at what the scenario is today, we are importing about 350 million tons of carbon in the various forms of energy. We are practically burning all of that carbon to produce the energy that we use today. And as a result of that, we are emitting anywhere between 2.6 to 3 gigatons of CO2 every year. And that makes us the third largest emitter in the world. Not a good sign. But contrastingly, if you look at in terms of energy security, the resources that we have almost 1 billion tons of, about 100 billion tons of coal reserves in the country. We have additional about 450 million tons of other carbonaceous forms of energy, whether it is biomass, agro residues, municipal solid waste, and so on. So, and then beyond that, of course, we have quite a bit of potential in non-fossil based energy, whether it is solar, wind, hydroelectricity, nuclear, and so on. And so India has really enormous potential to become energy self-reliance. But as I said, all this needs to be done with lower carbon footprint. And therefore, as we are signatories to COP26, it is imperative that we make sure our carbon emissions associated with energy generations are minimized. And therefore, the first thing, of course, that needs to be done is to improve the energy efficiency of all our processes, move away from just burning coal to make energy to more technologically advanced processes like IGCC, where coal is gasified to make syngas. Syngas is then used to make energy, but also used to make a whole lot of chemicals. And India is, I think, already, it has gone beyond its promised what promises were in terms of solar energy generation, and the PM has announced even bigger ambitions for solar biomass. We haven't even scratched the surface as far as offshore wind is concerned, and given that we have almost 7,500 kilometers of coastline and a few pockets along the coastline which are wind rich, we haven't even scratched the surface of doing offshore wind. And then, of course, with all these renewable energy sources, it is imperative to have energy storage and various forms of energy storage, of which one energy vector that I'm going to talk about today is hydrogen, and that is something that I believe is going to be very important for India. So in the COP26, the PM announced what he called the Panchamrut, and there are these 5 important promises that he made, of which the last one I think is the most important one, net zero by 2070, yeah, the last one. And I think some of us were surprised by, we didn't expect it, but it was announced, and it is very good that it was announced. What this means is that in order to reach net zero by 2070, if you look at some of the numbers of India's energy transition, as I said, from 34 exajoules to 75 exajoules today until 2050, today we are almost 80% plus fossil energy based, and we have to go to a situation where almost 50% of our primary energy demand is met by clean resources. Yeah, so I was talking about India's Panchamrut, the five promises that we have made and how that means in terms of transiting from an 85% plus fossil-based energy to about 50% non-fossil clean energy. The importance of this transition is that many of the sectors today that are driven by fossil energy will transit to clean energy forms, and the first and the most important of those is electricity. There are many sectors which can transit to electricity. Power sector is one of the biggest ones. A lot of agricultural equipments will start going on green electricity. Solar pumps are already there, deployed in very large numbers across India. In terms of mobility, the light vehicles, the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, small cars, are very, very likely to get to electric mobility, and we are of course seeing that transition of EV mobility coming in a big way. But there are two sectors which are difficult to achieve carbon abatement purely based on green electrons, and this is the industry sector and the heavy duty transportation sectors, and together if you add these numbers, it would add up to between 30 and 33% of the emissions that come out from various sectors. 33% of those, that one-third of those, comes from industry and heavy-duty mobility. In India, actually, heavy-duty mobility, trucks and buses are ferrying a very large number of goods and passengers across the length and breadth of the country. In fact, the commercial vehicles today in India are on an average about 570,000 commercial vehicles are introduced on the roads in India today. So a very large amount of traffic happens on the roads today, and it's a cause of major pollution. So these are the two sectors, industry and heavy duty transportation, which are very difficult to move from fossil energy to just what we call green electrons. And these are the sectors where we believe hydrogen is likely to play a very important role. And this is not just in India, but across the world is the same story that repeats. Hydrogen is very interesting energy vector because it is what we call a sector coupling energy vector. You can transit between electrons and hydrogen very seamlessly and quite efficiently using technologies like electrolysis and fuel cells. So there's a very nice and interesting high efficiency transition from electrons to hydrogen and back to electrons. And so this is once you move from electrons to hydrogen, you use electrons to make molecules like hydrogen. You can then use hydrogen in a variety of different sectors. And I talked about industry, I talked about heavy duty transportation. There are many places where you need ammonia, and green hydrogen to ammonia is an important transition. And then there are many others where hydrogen can make a very interesting difference. Now, in principle, theoretically, you need solar and you need water to make hydrogen, and both resources are in reasonable abundance in water. We still look at India as a water-starved country, but desalination technologies are already there at very large scale. And the amount of hydrogen that we need for the country, and I'll tell you some numbers, I believe that desalination is not such a problem. So in my opinion, both resources to make hydrogen are reasonably abundant. And if scale comes in, there is increasing amount of affordability that comes in. There are also two other things that are important in India. We are moving away from centralized power generating stations, to decentralized forms of energy generation, and almost all of the renewable energy is made in decentralized way. That's a big transition for countries like India to happen. And what is interesting is that India has an enormous digital framework already set up, infrastructure of millions of kilometers of fiber optics already laid up, one of the cheapest data is available in the world today in India. And if you couple, therefore, digitalization, decarbonization with technologies like hydrogen, you get a very interesting story coming out. And the last thing that is very interesting to keep in mind is that India is today, as I said, a net importer of fossil and unclean energy. If you really invest in technologies like hydrogen, India could actually become a net exporter of clean energy. So this is a paradigm shift in so far as energy sector in India goes. And therefore, on the basis of this, the PM himself announced in 15th of August 2021 from the ramparts of the Red Fort of India going into a big green hydrogen mission. And it was all based on some very nice analysis, calculations, estimations that have been done by multiple players and very nicely consolidated into the National Green Hydrogen Mission by the Line Ministry, which is MNRE. And the National Green Hydrogen Mission document, if you read it, it has some very interesting thoughts that come in. First, it talks about demand, and it is estimated that India will need about 5 million tons of hydrogen, which we are using today in the form of what is called grey hydrogen. I'll talk about the colors of hydrogen. But 5 million tons moving from today's non-clean hydrogen to clean hydrogen is the lowest target that we have. And all of that hydrogen would go into refineries, fertilizer plants, and so on, where the offtake is ensured. And also this moving from grey or non-clean hydrogen to green hydrogen or clean hydrogen, the amount of the dollar value of hydrogen being much higher today does not significantly have an adverse impact on refining margins and so on. And there are some very nice numbers that one can show of even if you were to double the cost of hydrogen, the impact on refining margins are not very, very significant. So refining fertilizers is a assured offtake for ensuring that as much as 5 million tons of hydrogen can be produced as green hydrogen. That brings in scale, and with scale we kick in economies of scale. In another 10 years or so, it is estimated, maybe 15 years, it is estimated that the infrastructure for transporting hydrogen from points of generation to points of usage will come in place. This could be in the form of cylinders that move hydrogen from place to place, or even pipelines that move hydrogen. And this is where the infrastructure such as refueling stations and so on can come up, especially on a few corridors like the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, which is intensely trafficked with heavy duty transportation, commercial vehicles. These are the corridors that can be converted into green corridors if you were to take hydrogen along these transport corridors. And so by another 15 years, we would need about another 5 million tons, so total about 12 million tons of green hydrogen to support the heavy duty vehicle transportation. And by 2050 plus, the more difficult to abate sectors such as steel, cement, which are very large emitters, but rather difficult to move from today's technologies to green hydrogen technologies, those are the ones that will come in a big way. In fact, the steel sector in India is already making very large investments to run pilots on using green hydrogen in blast furnaces and DRIs and so on. So there's already a big move in that direction. But it will take some time to actually implement it at real scale. On the other hand, while the ministries are coming out with these roadmaps, corporate India is also making some big pledges. You have probably heard of Reliance making very large pledges in new energy, and part of that is hydrogen. The Adani group has also come up with very large announcements, and there are many other industries who have started making these announcements. And this move to hydrogen, this interest in hydrogen is not just restricted to India. It's an explosion that one sees. Hopefully it's not a hype this time, this is for real. But across the world, we see a very large interest in green hydrogen. There are about 530 plus very large projects where investments have already been made. About $64 billion of investments have been pledged. Some of it is already put on the ground, and these projects are running. And almost across the world, across all geographies, we have major projects coming up in a big way. So green hydrogen is a shift in clean technologies that is happening across the world, and India has also joined it. In fact, the more meetings I go to, I can see the pulse that the world is looking actually at India as a very large factor in the green hydrogen economy, becoming one of the large exporters of green hydrogen. I think the China factor is coming in a big way. The +1 factor in supply chains is coming in a big way. So people are really looking at India as becoming a major supplier for green hydrogen. If you look at where are the opportunities in the hydrogen value chain, there are three buckets where the opportunities exist. There is the production of hydrogen, there is the transportation and storage of hydrogen, and then the utilization of hydrogen. And in fact, opportunities for India lie across all these three parts of the value chain. And that brings me to the first part, which is the one that I will focus on today. I will not touch upon the other two, which is the production of hydrogen. And this is where the rainbow of hydrogen comes in. Hydrogen, we all know as school children, we know that it's a colorless gas. But today we talk about blue hydrogen, gray hydrogen, turquoise hydrogen, pink hydrogen, green hydrogen, yellow hydrogen, orange hydrogen, and so on and so forth. And these colors are essentially telling you about the source of hydrogen and the associated carbon emissions with the hydrogen. The gray hydrogen is one that is today produced all across the world. This mostly comes by natural reforming of natural gas. The brown hydrogen is one that comes from coal. So coal to hydrogen is called the brown hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is where the CO2 produced from either gray or brown technologies, that CO2 is captured and sequestered or converted into something more value added. So that is blue. So when you do not emit the CO2, but you're still producing it from either natural gas or coal, that's called the blue hydrogen. Pink hydrogen is where you use nuclear energy to produce hydrogen. There are also other reactions in something like a fast breeder reactor where hydrogen is produced as part of the whole process flow. So those hydrogen coming from either nuclear energy or from nuclear plants is called the pink hydrogen. And then there is turquoise hydrogen, which is a very interesting hydrogen producing technology where the feed material is still natural gas, but instead of steam reforming natural gas, you crack methane and you produce carbon and hydrogen. And if you have the right technology, you can make really high value carbon. The lowest value for that carbon is simply carbon black, which is used today in very large quantities. But you can today make really high value carbon which goes in applications like batteries. Anodes for lithium ion batteries is one of the most interesting applications for high quality hard carbon or graphitic carbon. And if you can make that kind of carbon from cracking methane, then the hydrogen that comes out is really of very low cost, because you can earn a lot of credits by sale of that carbon. So there are these very interesting technologies that people are looking at for producing hydrogen. If you look at gray hydrogen, as I said today, 5 million tons of it is produced as of today from natural gas reforming, but that is associated with about 10 tons of CO2 per ton of carbon, per ton of hydrogen. So you are emitting a huge amount of CO2 every ton of hydrogen that you produce. Brown hydrogen is even worse. The good part is we are sitting on very large carbon resources, also petcoke resources. There is also a major thrust on gasifying these carbon, which then gasification produces hydrogen. The bad part of that is you can emit as much as 18 to 20 tons of CO2 per ton of hydrogen. So this is a very large emitter of hydrogen, so not the right way to look at producing hydrogen using using coal or petcoke. I talked about green hydrogen. This is the technology that everybody is looking at today is water electrolysis, but using only renewable electricity. If you do not actually use renewable electricity, if you just use grid electricity to split water, this would be the largest emitter of CO2. In fact, estimates are anywhere between 38 to 43 tons of CO2 per ton of hydrogen is what you emit if you use the grid electricity today, which is of course not the clean electricity. So green hydrogen is one where hydrogen is produced by splitting water only by using renewable electricity. And that produces less than a ton of CO2 per ton of hydrogen, and today that is classified as green hydrogen. Okay, so by definition it is less than a ton of CO2 per ton of hydrogen. I talked about blue hydrogen, I talked about turquoise hydrogen. Turquoise hydrogen, the interesting part there is if you purely look at thermodynamics, of energy of formation of methane, it is actually far less than the energy of formation of water. That is, the energy required to split water is much higher than the energy required to crack methane. And therefore, it actually makes sense to crack methane and also produce the right quality of carbon which can be valorized. So basis all this, the India's hydrogen mission as created by MNRE focuses solely on green hydrogen. Okay? There is a lot of debate happening in the country today as to whether it should really only be green hydrogen, why not use grey hydrogen, why not kickstart the hydrogen economy using what hydrogen we have today available, which is all grey hydrogen. And of course, it makes sense to help create the infrastructure for hydrogen, the pipelines, the cylinders that will ferry hydrogen from one point to another can all be set up by investing in the cheapest hydrogen that is available today, which is grey hydrogen. But of course, going forward, we must move away from grey hydrogen and move to more green hydrogen. And therefore, India's mission for hydrogen is solely focused on green hydrogen. Just looking at numbers of what it means to make green hydrogen, to even achieve 5 million tons of hydrogen that is required until 2030, that's the plan, to make 5 million tons of green hydrogen that will go in refining and fertilizer sector. To make that amount of hydrogen, green hydrogen, you would require 100 gigawatts of renewable electricity, and that's 20% of what is promised by 2030. We are promising 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, that's the plan. And 20% of that, if used to make green hydrogen, is sufficient to make 5 million tons. That 100 gigawatts actually translates to 40 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity, and that amounts to an investment of close to $100 billion. So that's the kind of money required, investments required for India as a country to make 5 million tons of green hydrogen. But if done, it would abate 50 million tons of CO2. It would reduce LNG imports by about 65%, and there's a huge amount of revenue accrued through savings by moving away from the imports. And as we all know today, the natural gas prices have just shot through the roof. So the savings made by reducing the imports today makes imminent sense. All of this will happen if what is called the levelized cost of hydrogen, of green hydrogen, comes to within about $2 per kg. Grey hydrogen today is available at about less than $1.5 a kg. Okay, so we are used to that kind of numbers, $1.5 a kg. It's no longer actually $1.5 a kg because natural gas prices have really shot up. So today, even by reforming natural gas, the grey hydrogen would cost upwards of $2.5, $3 a kg. Okay, but let's say $2 per kg is the target that we want to reach for the levelized cost of electricity, for levelized cost of hydrogen. So we've done some calculations on what it would take to get to $2 per kg. Today, if we use the parameters that are required to make green hydrogen, for example, about 18 to 20% capacity utilization factors, electricity cost, the levelized electricity cost, renewable electricity touching about 2.1, 2.3 rupees a unit. The capital cost for electrolysis plant today is about $950 to $1,000 per kilowatt. Specific electricity consumption for electrolysis plant today is about 52, 53 kilowatt hour per kg. So if you use all these numbers and calculate the LCOH for hydrogen, it comes to about $5 a kg. And so we have to move from $5 a kg to about 2 or less than $2 a kg. And the question is it even possible to do it? And we made some calculations. I wish I could have shown you some waterfall charts that show that it's actually quite possible to make that happen. We can go from about $5 a kg to easily $1.5 a kg. And if really things go well, we could hit the $1 a kg that Reliance has been talking about. But I think reaching less than $2 a kg all the way up to $1.5 a kg is quite an achievable target. And our calculations have covered everything. They have taken the cost of capital, they have looked at depreciation, looked at cash credits from selling oxygen that is produced by electricity. All the considerations have been made, and we believe that it is possible to reach less than $2 a kg. Today, actually, the problem is that the cost of capital is very high. So, our key takeaways from our LCOH analysis is that in order to reach less than $2 a kg, you must have access to levelized cost of electricity of 1.8 to 2 rupees per unit. We are actually getting there. 2 rupees a unit is a spot price that is available even today. The bids that you see for solar are today 1.9 rupees a unit. So we are already getting there. I think there are a few other things that are worth looking at. If you look at an integrated solar electrolyzer plant, so you don't do the conversion of DC-DC or DC-AC, avoid those inefficiencies, and move away from an OPEX model to a CAPEX model by having an integrated solar electrolysis plant, then it even makes more sense. And the reason is that you can size the electrolysis and the solar plant quite innovatively to produce hydrogen. See, there are two ways to do it. If I want to produce X million tons per annum of hydrogen, I can either have a smaller electrolyzer that works 24/7, but my renewable electricity is not available for 24/7. That means I need to bring in energy storage, and bringing in energy storage jacks up the cost of electricity, right? So I have either that option, or I have the option of having a larger solar plant, a larger electrolyzer, but no battery, because I run only for 5 hours a day, which is roughly on average the time available for sun to shine and for us to use those photons to make hydrogen. So if I run the electrolyzer plant, I size it only for a 5 hour per day kind of number, then actually interestingly the LCOH is actually lower. So there are some interesting options available for smartly designing an integrated solar electrolysis plant. We are hoping that the capacity utilization factors will improve as pumped hydro storage is coming up in India, is already there. It's also coming up in bigger way, and gravity storage and other, and like I said, offshore wind comes up. So if your CUF goes from today 18 to 20% to about 35 to 40%, that makes a huge difference to the LCOH. The LCOH comes down. So we have multiple levers available to bring the LCOH down to $2 a kg. Beyond that, of course, the scale of production, the economies of scale kick in as you move to gigawatt scale electrolyzers, and of course as you indigenize electrolysis manufacturing, balance of plant, transformers, rectifiers, DC-DC converters. As you indigenize all of that helps even further to reduce the LCOH. There are other, at a policy level, interventions that must be done. The world is doing it. I'll touch upon it a little bit. So I think if you really want to unlock the green hydrogen potential in India, I think there has to be first and foremost a major thrust for export. And this is an interesting scenario that has emerged mostly today because of the Ukraine war, with the kind of suffering that Europe is undergoing because of the war. Europe has actually announced doubling its hydrogen requirement. They were looking at about 10 million tons of hydrogen. Today they are talking of 20 million tons of hydrogen. And Europe cannot make 20 million tons of hydrogen. So they're looking at 10 million tons made internally in Europe and 10 million tons of imports that they are depending on. Japan is hungry for hydrogen, South Korea is hungry for hydrogen, and so there's a huge export potential available today. So that I believe is the first major thrust for hydrogen in India to be looked at. Incentives is another thing. At least in the initial phases, India must seriously consider. And if you look at what other countries are doing, UK and US has come out now late, thanks to the new government there, but they have announced spectacular incentives. US has announced, for example, the government will subsume $3 per kg of hydrogen. So today, if you're making hydrogen at $5 a kg, $3 per kg is paid for by the government. That makes hydrogen available at $2 a kg, and I talked about $2 a kg as an exciting target, right? So today, green hydrogen made in US is available at $2 a kg. So there are major incentives coming up, and everybody is planning to jack up through these incentives, accelerate, catalyze the production of green hydrogen. Of course, this is only to kick in the economies of scale, and as the economies of scale kick in, I think you don't need those incentives to last very long. In India, we are looking at PLI schemes. We are looking at waiver of interstate transmission of renewable electricity. We are looking at free banking of renewable electricity for 30 days. So these are some of the initiatives that India has just now announced. DST has announced just yesterday creation of what they call hydrogen valleys, right? And they have identified through a good mapping of where land is available, water is available, biomass is available, export potential is available. So there is a solid amount of exercise that has been done across India, and they have identified a few places where investments can be made right now to kickstart hydrogen economy, and they call them hydrogen valleys. I think these announcements are likely to happen very soon. One of the things that India needs to unlock hydrogen potential is what we call RSC. This is the regulation, standards and codes. We don't have many in India. There are lots of these available outside India. I think as a country we need to harmonize those standards, the Indian standards with the global standards. Because without the regulation, standards and codes, you cannot deploy hydrogen at scale anywhere in the world. And I think most importantly, India must invest in R&D. India must leverage its enormous R&D potential. And to that aspect, the Green Hydrogen Mission document of MNRE has a very nice roadmap of how much investments are pledged until 2030. And they're talking of about 4,500 to 5,000 crore investment just in R&D, pilots, and so on. And these are very large investments from an Indian perspective, and I hope that that really happens. And academics and national labs like you and me will benefit from that, and we will then be able to catalyze the growth of hydrogen story in India. In CSIR, we had started looking at this back in 2002. Professor M.M. Sharma was our mentor in those, for many years. We started looking at hydrogen production from ethanol reforming, but then moving to fuel cells. And what has culminated through all that effort today, and I wish I could have shown you, we have launched the first really truly indigenously built hydrogen fuel cell bus. Except the carbon fiber cylinders, for which unfortunately there is no manufacturing in the country today, everything in that bus is purely indigenously made. The stack, the fuel cell stack is made here, the powertrain, the entire powertrain, the motor, the DC-DC adapter, the VCU, all of that is made in India. So this is a development that we are very proud of being associated with. There are other technologies at TRL levels 3 to 5 that CSIR has developed. We have the first hydrogen plasma reactor for purely green steel with zero emissions. We have a PEM electrolyzer system today, 20 kilowatt, that we have installed both in India at 3 places and also in Oman at a couple of places. We have stationary power fuel, stationary backup power systems that have been developed. And so there is a lot of interest that is there across academia and R&D and national labs for developing hydrogen technologies. CSIR has made bigger investments now. We have announced a hydrogen mission for CSIR. Another 100 crore is pledged for the hydrogen mission. We have 4 very large mission programs with 19 CSR laboratories and 8 industries participating in this mission. Whatever we aim to achieve is all globally benchmarked technologies, so we want to make sure that we are along with the global benchmarks, and also a continuous R&D that will happen will help us stay competitive through these continuous improvements. So there's a lot of excitement happening in CSIR, and when I go to other universities, I see the same kind of excitement, and of course, Professor G.D. Yadav here has been a champion for various hydrogen technologies through thermochemical cycles. And if you look at his numbers, they are even more spectacular. He is already promising less than $1 per kg for hydrogen produced through thermochemical cycles. So I think this is all looking very exciting, and I hope that this does not remain a hype, and it really this time, hydrogen has gone through many hypes. But this time I think many factors have come together to, I believe, to make sure that hydrogen becomes a reality in the next few years to come. So with that, I hope I have conveyed my message to some extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening all of us on such an interesting topic.
Some questions? Can take some questions?
Now, I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor A.B. Pandit, sir, to felicitate our chief guest with a memento, shawl and shriffle.
Before I do that, just would like to say a couple of things. First, my sincere apologies to today's speaker, Dr. Ashish Lele, and to you all. But when I listened to him, in a way, I thought it was good that there was no distraction of PPT. You could focus on what he was listening to, what he was saying, and you could understand it much better. So to compensate for that, I have just spoken to Ashish, and he is going to share the PPT, and I will circulate that PPT along with the lecture which has already been recorded. So an exercise for you, especially the students that listen to the lecture and go on changing the PPT yourself and make sense out of the numbers which he was talking about and the numbers and the figures which he wanted to show. So that's another way of new technique of learning and understanding rather than just listening to a YouTube lecture. But to be honest with you, I really felt that listening to him without having a periodic look at the screen and what he was talking about, we could intently listen to what he was saying, and that has also made me some learning. I have made some learning is I know to what extent I should use PPTs during teaching. Thank you, Ashish. Yeah, let's. I forgot. There is an honorarium associated with this particular lecture, sponsored by Color Publications. An honorarium.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Honorable Registrar, Professor R.R. Deshmukh, sir, to propose a vote of thanks.
Chief guest of today's function, Dr. Ashish Lele, Director NCL, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor A.B. Pandit, UAA President Dr. Sanjay Mehendale. In audience, Padma Vibhushan Professor M.M. Sharma, BOG Member Sandra Shroff Madam, Industrialist ICT Well-wishers, Professor J.V. Joshi, Professor G.D. Yadav, who have joined online. Even this function is seen in both the off campuses, directors of both the off campuses, online audience, faculty members present here and observing this event online, and dear students, it is indeed my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks to the honorable dignitaries present here in this KB auditorium for the 89th Foundation Day of ICT Mumbai. To begin with, I am grateful to Honorable Dr. Ashish Lele, the Director, CSIR NCL Laboratory Pune, for taking time off from his busy schedule to grace this occasion as a chief guest and also delivering color publication ICT Foundation lecture and explaining us significance of green hydrogen and how it will transform India as an energy importer country to energy exporter in the field of hydrogen energy. I am really very sorry, sir, for the connectivity issue between the device and the screen, but we really enjoyed your lecture, as our Vice Chancellor has mentioned. I also thank the Color Publications for their generous contribution in instituting the Color Publication ICT Foundation Day lecture at ICT Mumbai. Further, I thank Dr. Sanjay Mehendale, President UAA, for introducing the chief guest at today's function at ICT Mumbai. I thank Professor A.B. Pandit, Honorable Vice Chancellor of ICT Mumbai, for all the guidance and continuous support for all the functions and this function as well. I thank you all for being present throughout the program and gracing the occasion. Thank you all. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you all. I request everyone to please stand up for the national anthem.
शुभ नाम